"Your methods are too old-fashioned for our innovation strategy," he explained during my termination. "We need leadership driven by digital innovation." My name is Elliot Rayner, and for 16 years, I led the Central Sales Division for Hallmark Editions, a mid-sized publishing house headquartered in St. Paul, Minnesota. I didn't lead with algorithms. I led with handshakes, handwritten notes, and long-standing dinners with clients who trusted me with their legacy catalogs. Last year, my division accounted for nearly 70% of the company's total revenue. I knew every publisher between the Great Lakes and the Dakotas by name, and more importantly, I knew their pain points and passions. But none of that mattered when Carter Linwood, a 38-year-old tech entrepreneur turned CEO, walked into our company 6 months ago. He came with consultants from Silicon Valley, buzzwords about disruption, and a mandate to digitally modernize the brand. I knew I didn't fit that mold. I was 52, the only division head still carrying a leather-bound planner and meeting clients face-to-face instead of on Zoom. Still, I kept my head down, my numbers strong, and my silence intact. That Monday, Carter's assistant knocked on my office door while I was finalizing a $14 million reprint contract with my longest-standing client. "He wants to see you 2 o'clock. Boardroom," she said, eyes not meeting mine. I knew before I stepped in. The boardroom had changed glass panels, polished concrete, and a digital wall replacing the conference table. Carter sat at the head with 2 unfamiliar faces beside him, one from HR and one from legal. "Elliot, we appreciate your years of service," he said flatly, "but your methods no longer align with our innovation strategy. We're moving toward a data-driven future. You represent a legacy approach. We need a fresh perspective." I thanked him, shook his hand, and walked out without emotion. 16 years, gone in 16 minutes. I packed up while the team was at lunch. No speeches, no drama, just quiet dignity. But the moment I sat in my truck, the weight hit. 3 missed calls from David Brantley, my biggest client, a man whose father I'd met back in 2009 over barbecue and budget spreadsheets. He already knew. Word travels fast in publishing. I joined Hallmark when it was still called Brantley and Finch Books, with only 18 employees and no digital presence. I had left a lucrative role in Manhattan because I believed that real books still deserved genuine relationships. The late founder, Michael Brantley Sr., hired me personally. "We don't need someone who knows metrics," he told me. "We need someone who knows people." For 5 years, I rebuilt the entire central network from scratch. I logged over 80,000 miles across 7 states, attending weddings, funerals, and launch parties. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. By the time the company rebranded and expanded, I'd grown my division by over 500%. After I was let go, I took 2 weeks off. I didn't tell anyone, not even my wife. But the calls kept coming. Former clients, former colleagues, even some junior reps asked if I was starting something of my own. That planted the seed. I called my attorney, Mira Schultz, and asked her to review my non-compete. "They overreached," she said. "It's too broad, unenforceable if challenged, but they'll still try to intimidate you." I didn't want a war. I wanted freedom. So I didn't pitch. I didn't poach. I made myself available. Within 3 weeks, I filed paperwork for Rayner Collaborative, a consulting firm focused on relationship-driven publishing strategy. No website, no LinkedIn campaign. It's just a phone line and an inbox. David Brantley called first, then Riverhouse Literary, then Lansford Press. By the end of month 1, I had 5 major clients, all of whom had walked away from Hallmark on their own. Quiet exits, quiet contracts. 3 months in, I launched something bigger, a publishing consortium, a cooperative of independents that shared resources but kept their souls. No suits, no board, no digital fluff, just real people, real books, real strategy. 6 months later, Hallmark reported a 48% drop in quarterly revenue. Carter Linwood reached out. "We'd like to invite you back. With more authority, full control, I declined. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what mattered. Now, I sit in a small converted loft in northeast Minneapolis. No executive desk, just a shared workspace with the two staffers I trust. Sometimes, I stare out the window and smile. They fired me because I was old-fashioned. That's precisely what the industry needed. The day after I was fired, I sat in my home office, surrounded by silence, staring blankly at my phone. 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. 6 emails were flagged urgent, all from clients and industry colleagues, who had somehow heard before I'd even told my wife, Claire. She was in Denver visiting our daughter. I hadn't had the heart to ruin the trip. I needed space to think, to breathe. They had let me go under the guise of modernization. Your methods are too old-fashioned for our innovation strategy, Carter Linwood had said, his tone smooth but empty. We need leadership driven by digital innovation. And with that, 16 years of service gone in 16 minutes. But the part he misunderstood, what no algorithm could measure, was what I'd built. Not just revenue, not just contracts, but trust. Real, living, breathing trust is earned over years of late-night calls, road trips, book fairs, and personal sacrifice. 3 months before my firing, I'd started to feel the tremors. My assistant director, Jonas Cruz, began attending meetings I hadn't been invited to, strategy sessions with slides about automation funnels and engagement workflows. I asked him afterward how it went. He hesitated. They're talking about restructuring, he admitted. Creating a digital sales team, separate from legacy channels. Then came the quiet reassignments. 3 fresh out-of-college digital specialists showed up on my team without warning. Clients I'd managed for a decade were suddenly speaking with new account managers they'd never heard of. One of them, David Brantley, called me after some kid from HQ introduced himself as the new face of client success. What's going on over there, Elliot? David asked, frustration simmering beneath the surface. Just a bit of reorganization, I lied. Nothing to worry about. But I was worried, because I didn't know how to fight a battle where the weapons were dashboards and acronyms. I'd built a business on people. They were building one on metrics. Then William Brantley, the founder's son, and the last defender of our relationship-first philosophy, passed away from pancreatic cancer. He was 58. After that, no one stood in the way of the board's digital takeover. Carter was brought in weeks later, hand-picked from a health tech startup. And within a month, I was standing in a glass-walled boardroom, told that I was no longer relevant. Later that evening, after my phone buzzed for the 20th time, I finally answered. It was David again. What the hell happened? He asked. They're going in a new direction, I said almost robotically. You were that company to most of us, he snapped. Do they even realize that? I didn't respond. I couldn't. They sent Drew to meet with me. He continued. Talked for 40 minutes about analytics and conversion cycles. Never once asked about our new historical fiction line, the one we told you was make or break this year. He didn't even know it existed. I closed my eyes. I felt exhausted in a way sleep couldn't fix. They'll figure it out, I murmured. No, David replied sharply. People like that never figure it out. They don't listen. They replace. After the call ended, I opened the severance email from HR. 6 months' pay, 90 days of health coverage, a non-disparagement clause, and a non-compete banning me from working with Hallmark clients for a year. I laughed. They thought they could erase decades-long relationships with a single paragraph of legalese. My phone buzzed again minutes later. It was Eleanor Jenkins from Riverstone Press this time. I heard what happened, she said, her voice calm but cutting. It's their loss. Call me when you're ready to talk about what's next. By that night, 12 clients had reached out. Combined, they represented over 40% of Hallmark's annual revenue, but none of them talked about contracts. They spoke of trust, about how I'd shown up when no one else did, about the things no dashboard could ever track. I didn't call them back right away. I wasn't ready to move. Not yet. But I felt something shift, a quiet resolve. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving something else, that people still matter, that trust is still a currency, and that sometimes being fired isn't the end of your career. Sometimes it's the beginning of your legacy. I sat in my backyard that evening, bourbon in hand, watching the sky burn orange behind the tree line. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about the 12 clients who'd called me that day not to talk business, but to say, "We're with you." Their loyalty wasn't to Hallmark editions. It was to me. To the late-night emails, the in-person meetings, and the small things that made this business feel human. They had discarded me because I didn't fit their sleek digital rebrand. I prefer handwritten notes over CRM dashboards and honest conversations over metrics. But what if the very thing they saw as outdated my way of doing business was precisely what these clients still valued? That question kept turning in my mind like a key in a lock. I reached for my phone and called Mira Schultz, my attorney. "Mira, I need you to look over something for me," I said. "A non-compete clause. They let you go?" she asked, startled. "They did," I said. "And oddly enough, I think it might be the best thing ever happening to me." 2 weeks later, I met Mira at her downtown office. She slid the papers across her desk with a small smile. "It's unenforceable, too broad, too long, and most importantly, it can't legally stop you from applying your knowledge to new opportunities." "So," I asked, "I could start something?" "You could," she nodded. "But fair warning, they'll still come after you if they feel threatened. Even if they lose, they can make it painful." I thought about that. Hallmark had deep pockets, and Carter Linwood wasn't the type to let go quietly. "What if I don't approach anyone directly?" I asked. "What if I just exist?" Mira raised an eyebrow, then smiled. "That's a very different story." The next morning I filed the paperwork for Rayner Collaborative. No press release, no LinkedIn post, no website. Just a legal entity that could issue invoices and a phone line that rang eventually. 3 days later, it did. David Brantley again. "I hear you've set up shop," he said. "News travels. In this industry? Like wildfire." "I need help," he said. "Winter catalog's a mess. Hallmark's new team is pushing us toward academic markets, but my gut says we need to double down on historical fiction." I hesitated. "David, I'm still figuring out the next steps." $15,000. 2 months of strategic input. Nothing competitive. No conflict. Just guidance. It was generous. Smart. Deliberately designed to avoid legal entanglement. Even so, I wasn't sure. "I need to think," I told him. "Don't think too long," he replied. "We're finalizing direction next week." As I hung up, another call came in. Jonas Cruz, my former assistant director. His voice was low, urgent. "Can we meet?" Somewhere off the radar. We picked a quiet coffee shop near Lake Calhoun, away from the city noise and Hallmark's orbit. Jonas arrived early, fidgeting with his sleeve cuffs and checking the doorway like he was being followed. "It's bad," he said, settling into the corner booth. "They promoted me to your job. On paper, anyway. But everything's being run by the digital transition team now. I'm just a face they point to during meetings." I leaned back. "I figured as much." "No, you don't get it," Jonas whispered. "They're erasing everything you built. Every account, every client relationship. They're replacing the old systems and mandating software that the senior reps don't understand. 3 people have quit in the last month." "And the clients?" I asked, though I already had an idea. "Furious. Riverstone's threatening to pull out. Brantley's not returning calls. Projections are tanking, and Carter, he's blaming turbulence." He slid an envelope across the table. "Updated contact list. Personal emails. Cell numbers." I looked at it, then at Jonas. "You know, if I use this, they'll sue me, and they'll come after you too." "I didn't give it to you," he said quietly. "And we never met today." After he left, I sat there long, turning the envelope in my hands. It would be easy to use it just one call, and I'd have a strong client list to rebuild my career overnight. But easy wasn't the plan. Predictable was what they expected. I left the envelope untouched on the table. The rebuild would come, but on my terms. A month passed. I hadn't contacted a single Hallmark Editions client, even though I received calls almost every day from publishers asking for help. I deflected them all politely, firmly. The non-compete may have been flimsy, but I wasn't ready to test its limits. Not yet. Instead, I focused on what wouldn't raise flags. I advised independent publishers. I mentored a few university presses. I spent afternoons in coffee shops helping young literary agents understand distribution and contract structure. Quiet work, off the radar, far from anyone Carter Linwood or the Hallmark Board would consider at risk. Then came an invitation I hadn't expected. Gregory Vance, chairman of Hallmark's board, asked to meet, not at the office, at his private club in downtown Minneapolis. I accepted more out of curiosity than courtesy. Something about the message felt urgent. The Anderson Club was old-school dark wood walls, vaulted ceilings, waiters in gray vests. Gregory was already seated in a corner room. 2 glasses of scotch poured and untouched. "Thank you for coming, Elliot," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I imagine you're wondering why I asked to meet." I didn't respond. I just sat down and waited. He pushed one of the glasses toward me. "Things aren't going well," he said. "Revenue's down 38% this quarter. Client retention has cratered. The digital initiative that transformed our business has done the opposite. It's driven our core accounts out the door." I took a small sip. Let the silence speak for me. "You're not surprised," Gregory said. "No," I replied. "Publishing is a relationship business. Always has been." Gregory nodded. "Madeline Kerr's approach works fine in tech, but not here. The board is reevaluating." I waited. "We'd like you to return," he said at last. "As Chief Revenue Officer, above Madeline, full authority over sales and client relations." I blinked. "Above Madeline?" "Yes. What about Jonas Cruz? He's in my old role." "He's capable," Gregory admitted. "But he doesn't have your relationships, or your understanding of this space." "And Madeline would accept that structure?" Gregory's jaw tightened. "She wouldn't have a choice." The pieces fell into place. "This isn't about one bad quarter, is it?" He exhaled. This started the day we approved Madeline. She was William's last hire. His final strategic move before his illness made him step back. We went along out of loyalty. I studied Gregory carefully. The mask of control was cracking. "She's been quietly removing anyone tied to William's era," he said. "Your dismissal was part of that. So was reorganizing client management, bypassing traditional teams, cutting the handshakes and replacing them with dashboards." I noticed. "Elliot," he said slowly, "the board recognizes that was a mistake." The scotch tasted warm and slightly sweet. I let it linger on my tongue before responding. "Is this about preserving relationships?" I asked. "Or salvaging revenue?" Gregory didn't flinch. "Both." I set my glass down. "You know she'll make it difficult," I said. "She won't go quietly." "She won't have to," Gregory replied. "She'll stay. For now. But her influence will be limited." The implication hung in the air like cigar smoke. They didn't just want me back. They wanted me to fix what they'd broken, and, in time, dismantle what Madeline had built. I leaned back, staring past Gregory at the wood-paneled wall. "She replaced legacy with vanity," I said softly. "Now, you want the old system rebuilt." "We want what works," Gregory corrected. I stood up slowly. "I'll think about it." He nodded. "But don't take too long. The board meets again next Thursday." Outside, the air was sharp, tinged with early fall. I walked to my truck in silence, hands in my coat pockets. They hadn't changed their values. They'd failed without me. They didn't want Elliot Rayner back. They wanted the loyalty he carried. Gregory Vance didn't say it outright, but I saw it in his eyes. From the beginning, the board knew that firing me had been a mistake, but they hadn't dared to intervene. Not when Madeline Kerr still glowed digital transformation behind her and the full backing of William's final decision. Now that the company's revenue had taken a nosedive and core clients were vanishing like clockwork, suddenly they wanted me back. The offer Gregory made was generous. Double my previous salary. Complete control over sales and client relationships. The board's backing to rebuild the team on my terms. It was everything I should have wanted. Power. Vindication. Security. But I didn't answer right away. I need time to consider, I told him. Of course, Gregory said, leaning back. But don't take too long. The situation is deteriorating fast. On the drive home, the silence in the truck was loud, the kind that lets the truth echo. They didn't want me for my values. They wanted me for my client list, for the loyalty that followed me out the door. They needed a scalpel to cut down the empire Madeline had built quietly, and I was the hand they trusted to wield it. That realization didn't make me angry. It made things clear. I sent Gregory a short, polite email the next morning. I declined the offer. His reply came 10 minutes later. He offered more money, greater authority. I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up the phone and made 3 calls. The first was to Robert Langston. I'm ready to discuss that consulting arrangement, I said, but I'd like to pitch a different approach. I'm listening, Robert said. I won't work exclusively for Langston and Company. I'm forming a collective, a consortium of independent publishers who pool their resources, distribution access, and market intelligence. No contracts. There is no corporate overhead. Just publishers helping publishers. I'll be the connector. There was a long silence. How many others have you called? He asked. None. You're the first. Because I was your biggest client? No, I corrected. Because I trust your instincts. Another pause. Then, I'm in, and I know at least 5 others who will be too. The second call was to Daphne Rhodes at Rhodes House Publishing. She didn't just sign on, she sharpened the vision. She suggested a shared digital infrastructure that would give the smaller houses the scalability they lacked without sacrificing their identity. The third call was to Mira Schultz, my attorney. I laid out the whole plan. She listened, then smiled. You're not working for Hallmark's clients, she said. You're building something entirely new. Their clients choose to join. That's not a loophole. That's a moat. By the end of that week, I had 7 founding members, all former Hallmark clients. Some had already severed ties. Others were letting contracts expire. Each contributed to a shared operational fund to cover basic infrastructure and my salary. We didn't need flash. We needed clarity. And the key wasn't just building a rival organization. It was creating something Hallmark couldn't replicate, not with all the dashboards in the world. A human network built on trust. No hierarchy, no politics. Just competence, commitment, and care. We called it Rayner Consortium quietly at first. We set up in a small loft space in northeast Minneapolis. I hired 2 people, a brilliant recent grad named Tessa, to run communications, and a semi-retired publishing veteran, Gloria Wu, to manage operations. No glass offices. No executive parking. Just purpose and proximity. And every week, the calls kept coming. Some clients I hadn't spoken to in months. Others from reps inside Hallmark who'd finally had enough. Madeline didn't understand it. I couldn't fight it. Because the one thing she never invested in relationships was the very thing we'd built our foundation on. They had fired me to modernize the business. And in doing so, they handed me the future. What I built wasn't flashy. It wasn't backed by venture capital or run out of a high-rise. But it was something Hallmark Editions or any other corporate giant, for that matter, couldn't replicate. It was a human structure, a collective, a web of publishers who wanted to keep their independence while benefiting from shared knowledge, resources, and relationships. No board, no titles, just mutual respect and a shared desire to do better. We called it the Rayner Consortium. I never claimed the role of CEO. I didn't want it. I wasn't building a company. I was building connective tissue, a framework where others could thrive. We found a modest loft space on the edge of Loring Park, far from the downtown towers where Hallmark and its imitators clung to what was left of their relevance. I hired 2 people. One was Tessa, a 24-year-old communications grad passionate about storytelling and zero tolerance for jargon. The other was Gloria Wu, a retired operations director who'd run logistics for a dozen mid-sized houses and still had more fire in her than most 20-somethings I knew. Between the 3 of us, we launched. Word spread fast. By the end of our first month, 3 more publishers joined. By the second, we had to move into a larger space. I never once contacted a Hallmark client directly. I didn't need to. They found us. They came not just because of me, but because they were starving for an environment where relationships were still currency. 2 months in, my phone lit up on a rainy Thursday evening in September. It was Jonas Cruz, my former assistant at Hallmark. No. Small talk. They know what you're doing, he said. Madeline's furious. She's talking legal action. We haven't broken any agreements. I replied calmly. That won't stop her from trying. She's spinning it hard. The board meets tomorrow. It's gonna be ugly. That's not my concern anymore. I figured. I needed to ask, do you have room for one more? I've hit my ceiling over here. I paused, then smiled. Come by tomorrow, I said. We'll talk. The next day, Hallmark's quarterly earnings call confirmed what we already knew. Revenue was down 45% year over year. The stock dropped 17% in one afternoon. I didn't listen in. I was busy leading a strategy session with 15 consortium members, finalizing our presence at the upcoming Chicago Independent Publishing Summit. That afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. This is Cynthia Moore from the Hallmark Board of Directors, the woman said briskly. We've voted to waive your non-compete agreement, effective immediately. We're also authorizing a cease concerning what we interpret as interference with our client base. I let the silence stretch. Do you have any response, Mr. Rayner? Just one, I said. Have you spoken to your clients directly? A pause. Not through reps, not via surveys. I spoke to them and sat down face to face. Asked why they left. That's not relevant to. It's the only thing that's relevant. She didn't answer. They didn't leave because I started something new. I continued. They left because you stopped valuing what mattered to them. I heard the background murmur of a live board meeting. Papers rustling. Someone whispering. Is this being recorded? I appreciate the call, I added. But I'm busy. The people who stayed with you are waiting for a spreadsheet. The ones who came with me are building something that lasts. I hung up. Not in triumph. In clarity. Because this wasn't revenge. This was restoration. A business rebuilt on trust. And that kind of foundation, it doesn't crash when the market dips. It holds. Quietly. Steadily. Just like the people who built it. 3 days later, Hallmark's CEO resigned. 6 months after we began, we moved into a renovated brick warehouse on the edge of Marcy Homes. 23 member publishers and a waitlist. Our name appeared in Publishers Weekly. Then the New York Times. One headline called us, The Relationship Renaissance. I never meant to start a movement. I just remembered what the industry forgot, that relationships are infrastructure, and when built with care, they outlast disruption. Last Tuesday, Harold Blackwood from Hallmark called. We'd like to explore joining the consortium, he said. I smiled. That's not how we work, Harold. After hanging up, I walked through our open floor. No glass offices, just desks, daylight, and dialogue. Later that afternoon, I drove to Lake Nokomis and sat by the water. It was where I used to come when Hallmark's chaos felt crushing. Now, there was no weight, just a quiet, anchored pride. I never set out to be revolutionary. I only wanted to prove one thing. When people feel seen, they stay. And when they're valued, they build with you. Sometimes, getting fired doesn't end your story. It edits the chapter title, so the next one reads more clearly. Looking back, the most challenging part was being fired. Losing your title, income, and sense of place it feels like the ground has been pulled out from under you. But the truth? That wasn't the hardest part at all. The real challenge was staying silent long enough to listen to others, the gaps, and what wasn't being said. Because sometimes, what breaks you open also frees you to build without illusion. I didn't rebuild out of spite. I rebuilt because I finally understood what mattered. People, relationships, quiet consistency. I learned that your actual value isn't in your title or office view, it's in who still calls you after you're gone. Who trusts you when no one else is watching? Who shows up not for your brand but for your integrity? And if you're ever in that place discarded, doubted, overlooked, I want you to remember something. You are not finished. You are not irrelevant. You are not alone. The world may chase disruption, but it still needs anchors. And trust? That's the last thing AI, dashboards, or quarterly reports can replicate. So, build something real. Not just to prove them wrong, but to remind yourself and others what right feels like. Because in the end, the quiet things last. And the people who choose depth over noise always find their way back to each other. That's not revenge. That's restoration.